Well, for more on South Africa's economy, I'm joined by Nii Akuetteh. Nii is the Executive Director for the African Immigrant Caucus. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Now, as we saw there, some economists were surprised to see 2% GDP growth in the third quarter for South Africa. What's your take on that?
Yes, I think it is surprising because, as you mentioned, they are the most highly industrialized economy on the continent. They have resources and institutions. You expect them to be doing better. But if you pull back and take a better look, it does make sense because, as you mentioned, the current administration, the Zuma administration, has been caught in a lot of scandal, especially if you go by their image in the global press. And that has to do things to investor confidence. But there is also the domestic angle. There has been a lack of domestic demand, in addition to the uncertainty over who's going to take over from Mr. Zuma, and we don't even know whether he'll be allowed to finish his term as president of the country, because there's the presidency of the ANC, but then the presidency of the country. So there are many factors there.
So between some of the political uncertainty and, as you mentioned, what's happening with consumer demand, and you also have high unemployment. So overall, how would you characterize South Africa's economy?
I think it is slowing down, but I think, when you look at the contest for political leadership, the economy at the front is at the front and center of the two major rivals who want to succeed Mr. Zuma. They are each addressing what they will do with the economy. So for me, that's a sort of a ray of hope that the political leadership understands that they must chart an economic path that will give people confidence. I think depending on who is chosen, I happen to think if Mr. Ramaphosa is chosen, he seems to have great connection with the international community, given his background, but also with labor, because he started out as a labor leader. On the other hand, Mrs. Zuma is stressing equitable distribution and making sure that all parts of South Africa benefit. So they are offering different platforms.
Now, let's also look at something that President Zuma said recently in a speech. He said that Africa needs to develop manufacturing capabilities, achieve industrialization, and drive intra-African trade in order to reverse the trend of exporting raw materials and then importing the finished goods. What's your take on that strategy as a way to provide growth?
Oh, I think there is no question about that. I think he's spot on. And in fact, I dare say if you go across the continent, from Cape Town all the way to Cairo, you will not find anybody who will disagree, because Africa has been exporting raw materials forever. Yes, we need manufacturing, we need processing. The question is, how do you do it? Do you get the investors to do it? And of course, Africa's trade, trade between African countries is dismal, and that needs to be improved. So we have to find good ways of doing it. But as an objective, as something to do, he's right on the money. Question is, how do we do it in practice?
And do we know how the visions offered by his potential successors could perhaps either further that or lead to more of what we've already seen?
What I think is that both of them, if I might look a bit north to Zimbabwe, they have had a change of government, their economy has been hard hit, and they need external investment, they need external investors to come in. South Africa actually invests in many African countries. So I think helping pull Zimbabwe out is one of the another opportunity for South Africans. And I think both leaders who are contending, I think they have that on their radar screen. So I'm looking at what South African companies will be doing in Zimbabwe over the next few months.
So then just quickly, looking ahead at the sort of opportunities that South Africa does still have that could be perhaps untapped that they could cash in on, what would they be?
I think you mentioned the ones that, the growth that we have seen in agriculture, the growth that we've seen in mining. Now there is some contest over whether to increase the proportion of mining shares that must be sold to Black South Africans. I think if that is resolved well, you could also see mining pick up.
All right. Thank you, as always, for your insights. Nii Akuetteh there from the African Immigrant Caucus.
Thank you.